Hey friends, Chris Maholka here. Today we're going to be doing some testing on UV curing glues or resins. These are resins that can be used on fly tying as well as a lot of different types of crafts. A while back I asked on some of the fly fishing forums what types of adhesives people were using, and I took those different recommendations from all across the spectrum and assembled pretty much the top contenders that I got feedback for. So I'm going to be testing today, and I'm going to try to test a thin and a thick version of each resin. I've got Loon, they're thin and they're thick, and they're little dispenser packs. We're going to try the Solarez, which comes in a little pack with the thin, thick, and flexible also, so we'll have that option to try out as well. I got the Gulf resin. This is the classic clear normal viscosity, and then the one that's near and dear to my heart, the Fat Man, the thicker version. We got Rapid Zap in their thin UV version and their thick version, which also says it's a flex, so we'll see how that works out. And then two that I have been dinking around with for a while, the Clear Cure Goo in both the brushable and the tack-free formula. So to do the tests on these, I've come up with a couple thoughts on what I like to see in a resin. One is how durable it is. So I built this little device with a hammer. Just put it on a little pin, actually a nail there, so it rotates. Got my target on here. I'm going to use this and drop it and see how solid the resin is, if it fractures or if it cracks. For an adhesion and tackiness test, I'm going to use, I put some little dots of Mylar, like if I was making eyes for lures or something. I put two of them on here. I'm going to make two little eyes with domes of the resin. I'm going to test one for tackiness, I'm going to test the other for adhesion, and also for the durability test. Then I've also tied up a bunch of these basic little like scud bodies. They're just hair zero and antron, and I'm going to do an adhesion and a soak test. I'm going to put some on of the resin on top, and I'm going to see in 10 seconds how far it sinks down into the fly, so when I set it, it will show you how much absorption the material has into any type of like a scud body. To make my little test patches, I'm going to use a piece of Mylar, set it on a piece of hardwood with a 5/16 inch punch. I'm just going to punch out a couple eyes or a couple of circles here. If you haven't watched my video on making eyes, you might want to go and see that, because I show you how to turn these into all kinds of nice eyes for your patterns. Pull those two out that I punched. Use a needle or whatever to separate them from the backing. Once they're separated from the backing, I'm just going to stick one on each end of the plastic. So I have two sample patches. This will serve us in a couple different tests we're going to do. Then as I do a glue, I will label it in the middle with a Sharpie to tell me what I'm working with, so in future reference I'll be able to tell in my grading which material works better for this type of test. For this first test, we're going to use the Loon Thin, and I'm using a light. It's a Lux Pro, and it says it's 385 to 390 nanometers. I believe it's nanometers of light. And what I'm going to do, because the different glues have different instructions for how to cure them, I'm going to settle on one kind of a middle of the road approach. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the glue on. I'm going to set this down, and this has a recessed lens, so it will not touch the glue. I'm going to give it 1 sec or 2 seconds of cure time, off for 10 seconds, back on it for 10 seconds. Some of these glues and the waxy part you get in the finish is literally wax that's in the glue, and it helps the curing process. helps it cure evenly, but that wax comes to the surface. So they want you to do a real quick first shot, let it kind of breathe for a couple seconds, and then hit it with a real good cure. So that's the way we're going to do it in all these tests. So here we go. Let's put our glasses on so we can see, and I'm going to see how well this spreads. And I'm going to grade this on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the best. It's rolling pretty good. It's creeping out to the edges. A little bit more on the side. Want a nice dome if you're making eyes or anything. So it's creeping nicely. It's not really working its way out to the edges as fast as I thought maybe a thin should. So here we go. We're going to give it our 2 seconds of light. 1001, 1002, and off. 1001, 1002, 3, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now theoretically we should have a really well cured glue. It feels solid, it's not terribly waxy. I'm grading these on a 1 to 5 scale, with 5 being the best and 1 being the worst. I'm going to give that about a 4 on spreading out, and about a 4 on waxiness. It's not very waxy. It's got just a little bit of a slime to it. Then I move over and do the other side. Same type of thing. And if I get a really different appearance on one of these than the other, I may redo a test just to make sure that I haven't had an error of some kind. That one's spreading out nicely. 1002. 7, 8, 10, 2, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 8, 9, 2010. Okay. Pretty much the same. I'm going to give them about a 4 and a 4. 4 and a 4 for spread, and a 4 for tack. And this is the Loon Thin. So now it's just a matter of repeating the same process with all the different cements, and then I'll get that done. I will show you the next step, the durability test, and then we'll go on to the soaking in or absorption test. Okay, so I've got all of the UVs I'm testing all done with two on each sheet, marking how I like the smell, how easily they spread, how tacky they were. Next, we're going to go to the durability test using my little hammer device. Let's give that a try. So we're going to start same place we started making these, with the Loon Thin. And what I'm going to do on these, I'm going to put the drop right on my little bullseye that I've got there on the my little target. I'm going to hold the hammer head up to about a 45-degree angle. I'm going to let it drop. We'll do this 3 times for each glue. Now what I'm looking for is, first off, did I flatten it at all? Little tiny bit, but not bad. Second thing I'm looking for is, are there any fractures in the adhesive? Because you don't want breaking and coming apart on your fly. So that one looks really good. No flattening, no fractures. I'll grade that a 5 on durability. Now I'm going to go through and test all the rest of these, and I'll let you know where we go from there. After running through all these, I found something kind of interesting. It has to do with the hardness of the resins. durability or hardness. This is the Solaris Thick. When this gets hit with the hammer, listen to the sound. High pitched, and there's a lot of bounce on the hammer. See the bounce? The kind of the dull sound? So that's the softest standard resin I tested. Compare that to the Gulf, the Fat Man. You'll hear the difference and see the bounce difference. Hear it? A lot higher pitched, a lot harder. The Solaris Thick is very, very close. I did a little test on the Solaris Flex while I had it out. Very similar. Very dull sound. So the Solaris Thick and the Solaris Flex are very close to the same density when they're cured. The thing I did find is where I was curing all the resins at the 2 seconds and then 10-second rest, then 10 seconds to cure, everything cured up except the Solaris Flex. It took a full 2 minutes of curing to get this, so when I dropped the hammer on it, it didn't squirt out the sides, so where it still didn't have liquid inside the little bubble. So just a note, the Solaris Flex takes a lot more cure time. Okay, let's move on. Now we're going to do the absorption test. We're going to take this little hare's ear and Antron body, kind of brush the fibers down like you would if you're doing a scud. And we're going to start with our Loon Thin. And I'm going to apply this, a bead right along the top. I'm going to give it 10 seconds and then I'm going to cure it. And we're going to see from that how much it soaks into the fly. So let's give this a shot here. Nice even bead along the fly. 2, 3, 9, and then 10. We're going to hit it with our UV light, which cures it pretty much instantly. And that shows that this particular thin really soaked down in. It's halfway down in the body. Not quite all the way to the bottom, but it didn't form a ridge on top like if we were going to do a shell back, but we would add another coat if we're going to do that. I'm going to do that with the rest of my UV glues, and we'll tell you how the results turn out after that. So after the testing with the UV on them, testing the absorption, how well they do, I'm calling my winner for the thin category for just coating the top, Gulf Classic Normal. It soaked in enough to seal, but it didn't totally suck down into the fur. It kept a nice shell on the top. If you wanted to make a real nice scud shell or something on a fly, a second coat of that I think would do really well. If you're doing thick, you want a real high bead on your pattern. The winner in this category is the Solaris Thick. It stayed on top. It did seal well, but it stayed on top high where I could make a really tall shell if I was doing something that required a casing like that. So that would be my winner for the thick versions. Something interesting I wanted to show you. The Clear Cure goo worked well, but I found that the tack free looks fine on top when you cure it, but the brushable, which is a little bit thinner, when you hit it with the UV light to cure it, it glows. It has a UV fluorescence in it. Now, there's several thoughts of whether or not you want a fly that has UV in it. It looks unnatural. One side says it looks unnatural. The other side says that it helps attract fish deeper in the water. So just as a side note, the Clear Cure goo brushable does fluoresce, and it's the only one of the cements I tested that actually fluoresces. Well, so I've got all my testing done, And I've come to some basic conclusions. You need to choose the type of UV curing glue on the type of flies you're tying. Not a big revelation, but there are some little things I have found. If you're doing scuds, small flies, the thinner materials are going to work better, some better than others. You'll see that in the chart of absorption, how fast some things soak up the UV glue and how some things sit on top. If you're doing bigger flies or you're doing things that you want a big clear casing on, then go with the thicker compounds. There's surprisingly a lot of variance between all the UV cements, but they're very, very minor. If you're using UV cements on a regular basis, pick one thin, one thick version and go with them. Any of the major brands seem to do a great job. Some are more expensive than others. One of the things I found that was kind of interesting to me was the Raid Zap and the Gulf. Both come from a Scandinavian country, and both of them come with a bottle, black bottle with that kind of a cap, a brush, and that type of a top. The Zap comes in a black bottle with a brush and that kind of a cap. Leads me to believe that they are from pretty much the same company, but are being marketed in different brands. There were very minor things in testing that could have just been my errors in testing, but one of these is significantly more expensive than the other. So if you lean toward one or the other of those brands, you might check prices if that matters to you. The end of the video here, I'm going to post the chart of the scores, and again, I'm not totally inept in giving you a winner because it's very difficult to say what might be a winner for one person compared to another. I'm giving you the numbers so you can look at them and see what soaks in better, what cures less tacky, which one is more durable, and those are the things I think are important for you to choose when you're picking your cement. So hang on here, I'll get that chart on the end of the video, and thanks for watching.